Last night, we saw some pretty severe rioting in Rochester as a very large Black Lives Matter group made their way through the city. At one point, they approached a restaurant and started pushing out the patrons while chanting Black Lives Matter, eventually knocking tables over as some of the patrons began screaming and running from the scene. Most of the patrons seemed to have just got up and walked away. But they went into this outdoor dining area, knocking tables over, saying, "Party's over, time to go, we're ending your party," things like that. And that was scary. But we also saw videos of Black Lives Matter extremists climbing on top of people's homes to cheering and yelling. And in one video, they even tried breaking into to an apartment building. I warned, it's only a matter of time before they break into your house, before they come to where you live. How many people in Rochester expected this to happen in their town? How many people in Kenosha? What we are seeing is low-tier terrorism. They go up to these people at the dining, first they went to the restaurants and they raised their fists and said, "Salute, do it now." Now they're actually shoving people out. We have more information as it pertains to the Antifa Black Lives Matter crackpot killer in Portland. This man, Michael Reinhold, who killed the Trump supporter. The arrest warrant, I believe it's the arrest warrant, has been released. And I can say it now appears we have confirmation. I want to be delicate because I'm going to be basically giving my analysis based on this photo, but I think any reasonable person would conclude we have an image of the Black Lives Matter Antifa guy hiding around a corner with his hand on his weapon, stalking Aaron Danielson and Pappas. I think his name is Chandler Pappas. I'm not sure. This guy, this Antifa far left guy, stalked them for about a block or so before killing this man. It was not self-defense. It was not an accident. Many of us speculated it was a targeted killing. And now we have photographic evidence that I believe confirms that fact. I'm being very, very delicate when I say I believe, so forgive me, but you can look at the images for yourself. You combine the overt level of extremism, and I need you to realize just how serious this is. Donald Trump apparently recently said that he's going to be having the DHS say that white supremacy is the most dangerous and persistent threat in this country. And a lot of people got mad saying this is the stupidest thing in the world. And I think it is pretty dumb. I think I know why he's doing it. I think it's political. But I think you need to consider something. Have there been what we would describe as far right extremists? I would say technically, yes. Not even the ADL has an accurate description of what far right really means. Like anti-government is far right, but that's kind of weird because Antifa is anti-government. So they try to define it. But I will tell you this. The Klan, these supremacists, whatever, they have no organizational power. Now take a look at the left. Now you have people armed with guns. They've killed, 30 plus people in the riots. Now they're actively targeting Trump supporters. In this video, we can see it. This is the line. It's been crossed. But they also have massive organizational power and fundraising. They are a national organization that has brought in, tens of millions of dollars. They can snap their fingers and get 1,000 people in the street like we saw in Rochester. And then their enforcers, their lunatic crackpots, will hunt down a Trump supporter and kill him. Pray this is where it stops, but I'm sorry, I just don't see it. And I know that a lot of people are saying that, a bit too pessimistic. I got, to the people who are upset that I'm being a realist on this stuff, I don't know what else to tell you. I'm not the only one who said this, and I didn't make it up. And I'm showing you an image right there on the screen of a far leftist, Black Lives Matter Antifa guy stalking two Trump supporters just before he killed one of them. Was I wrong several months ago when I said it's going to come to gunshots? Was I wrong when I said they'll come to your homes? Last night, they were on top of people's homes. They were trying to break into an apartment complex. What do you think happens next? It is not crystal ball scrying. I am not picking lottery numbers. They are telling us what they intend to do and why they intend to do it. They are saying revolution, nothing less. So why would you not take their word for it when every step of the way they've done exactly what they wanted to do? Let's take a look at this story, and we'll talk about everything that's happened with this and with Rochester. From Seattle Times. Portland shooting suspect followed right-wing activists after spotting them downtown, unsealed arrest warrant says. This actually, I'll just jump to the warrant, okay? I want to show you this image and read what it says just after this man Reinhold identified the Trump supporters. You can see uninvolved subject on skateboard in the photo, Danielson in subject 1. But let's get down to the point where they show that Danielson was actually stalking these individuals. Take a look at this. They say, 8:44:23. The female in the white t-shirt stops walking and stands against the wall as Reinl continues. Danielson and Chandler Pappas are seen rounding the corner from the east and turning south onto southwest 3rd Avenue. Reinl looks back toward Danielson and Pappas, but continues walking and begins reaching towards his waistband. They said second-degree murder, but come on, man. He saw these guys and immediately went for lethal force. They didn't do anything. These guys are walking down the street. Targeted hit. I shouldn't say hit. Targeted killing. 8:44:26. Reinl turns into the garage and reaches toward his left front waist area. Reinl conceals himself, waits, and watches as Danielson and Pappas continue walking by. Danielson and Pappas do not appear to interact or communicate with anyone and continue southbound on Southwest 3rd Avenue. Danielson appears to be holding a can in his right hand and what appears to be an expandable baton in his left hand. No knife. Interesting, no knife. We can see in this photo, there's Reinl hiding around the corner in a parking garage as they walk past. He is stalking them. 8:44:33. After Danielson and Pappas walk by, Reinl begins to emerge from garage while still reaching towards the pocket or pouch on his waistband. Subject number 2 looks back at Reinl. Danielson and Pappas cross westbound across Southwest 3rd Avenue, and Reinl and subjects number 2 follow them. The shooting occurs shortly thereafter and is not captured on surveillance video. But what do we know? Reinl was lying in wait. He pulled back, waited for them to walk, and went up behind them. They were not threatening him. They were not attacking him. They were not following him, and they were not threatening anybody else. And he had his gun ready the whole time. 8:44:57. After the shooting, Reinl was observed backing into view while in the westmost lane. Reinl's right arm is raised as he is facing toward Danielson. Subject number 2 has already turned and is running away. Reinl then turns and runs north, then east on Southwest Alder Street, while appearing to manipulate the same area of his vest with his hands. Based on the above information, I believe probable exists that Michael Forrest Reinl, previously referred to in this affidavit as subject number 1, committed murder in the second degree with a firearm as defined in Oregon Revised Statute 163.1.115, and unlawful use of a weapon with a firearm as defined in Oregon Revised Statute 166.220, and the shooting and murder of Aaron Joseph Danielson at Southwest 3rd Avenue and Southwest Alder Street, City of Portland, County of Multnomah, State of Oregon. Therefore, I request a warrant to be issued for his arrest for the charge of murder in the second degree with a firearm as defined, yada, yada. He then goes on. So he talks about what happened a lot that night. But I think we can now say definitively, no self-defense, none whatsoever. When it came to Kyle Rittenhouse, he was being chased after witnesses said he or his group put out a fire in a dumpster that was being pushed towards a gas station. They were causing destruction. They were attacking. Rittenhouse and his friends were being defensive. They attacked Rittenhouse and chased him. Someone fired a gun. He turned, defended himself. He ran to get help from the police. They knocked him down, started beating him. He fired in self-defense. Should he have been out there? I do not believe he should have been. No. But I'm not going to act like he was the aggressor. Absolutely not. And 2 witnesses, I believe, at least Drew Hernandez, who was on the show last night, said he would have been killed. And he was there on the ground filming what was going on. That he said this guy would have been killed if he didn't defend himself. What about Reinl? Reinl stalked them. You can't argue self-defense if you lie in wait and then stalk these men. Now I'll tell you what gets really scary. Donald Trump wants to say that, whatever, white supremacy is the persistent threat or something. Fine, whatever. I don't believe that that makes sense. The right has no organizational power. And what I find particularly funny about many people on the right, they say things like, if there was a civil war, it would be over so quick because the right has all the guns. Is that all you think it takes to win? They often say the pen is mightier than the sword. I wonder, while many people on the right have been sitting in their homes, polishing their rifle and saying, haha, I can win any fight. That's true. Any physical confrontation. But can you win a strategic confrontation? And what technology do you control? Do you control lines of communication, or is the tech industry controlled almost exclusively by the far left? About that, how will you utilize financial technology, communications technology, and I mean, just literally any other tech platform when it's being dominated by the far left, or at the very least, the corporations are on the side of the extremists. Black Lives Matter is organized. That organizational power is more powerful than any weapon. I mean, think about it. You get a guy in his home and he's armed and 300 people crash through his door and he might be able to defend himself against a couple of them. But I'm sorry, man, you can't do it. You can't stop the mob when they're charging at you. 1,000 people compared to a couple guys with good guns. No. Now, we don't want any of this escalation. We don't want it to get to that point. But the reason I bring this up is just to say, don't be arrogant. Don't think that you're invincible. And I think one of the big problems, there's a lot of people, and I'm not saying everybody, and I'm not just blaming the right here, but there's a lot of people who are like ready for civil war because they do not understand what is at stake. And they do not understand what they will face. These people are grossly underestimating their opponent. And that is a major, major mistake. I mean, read Sun Tzu. Never underestimate your opponent. Never. That's why I find it funny when they're like, oh, the right's going to win, hands down. These two Trump supporters were confident. I mean, why shouldn't they have been? Just walking down the street. I'm not saying confident in anything other than they're just walking down the street minding their own business. Was there any Trump supporter willing to make a preemptive strike to cheat, to get their friends in the press to lie on their behalf? And then what happens? Almost every single leftist says it was self-defense. They lie. Remember that video? You may have seen it. Conservative commentator and journalist Jack Posobiec. He's walking down the street in D.C. and a far leftist punches him. And then when the police pull right up, because I watched it happen, with a smile on their face, the leftists are like, I didn't see anything. Nothing happened. He didn't do that. They lie right to the cops because they are cheating. They are willing to cheat. They are willing to do anything. You know what? I look at it like, imagine this. You got this honorable warrior, the samurai. He's going to fight you head on. Hey-ya! And then you got the ninja who drops down from the roof and puts a knife in his back because the ninja didn't care how he won, just that he did. So yes, the honorable and confident conservatives and right-wing, activist groups and militias saying we will only engage properly. We will, treat with, honor and integrity. And the left saying we will lie in wait and stalk you. And then after they kill you, go on TV because their friends work for the major press and say it was self-defense. Why? They were going to harm a person of color. And that's a massive disadvantage. Outside of the fact that the left controls cultural institutions, I think it's interesting that, look, it may be true that many on the right have guns, but liberals have been running out and buying guns like crazy. I believe many of these liberals are late to the party. These far left groups are not anti-gun. And I believe that's another mistake conservatives make when they conflate liberals with the far left. And again, not everybody, but there's some out there. There's conservatives who do this. The far left has been pro-gun for a very, very long time. And now they've been publishing articles telling people it's time to go buy guns. So listen, you don't underestimate what might happen. And there's a lot of people who think that it's going to be over in a minute. Nah, man, it's not. You've got to understand how propaganda works. You've got to understand the control of financial technology. I mentioned this several times though, but like seriously, go watch that movie, The Resistance Banker. And I'll tell you how important financial technology is going to be. How do you fund any of these groups? Sure, you've got weapons. How do you resupply and who's going to resupply you? What happens when hot conflict breaks out and then all of the phones of all of these groups just stop working? You know why? You don't own the software on your phone. You know that, right? Your Android phone, your iPhone, the software that makes it run is owned by Apple and Google. What if they remotely brick your phone? I'm sure they could if they wanted to. Now you can't communicate with anybody. You have no idea what's going on. If they want to shut it down, they will. And whose side are they on? So then you have to start, going old school. I just say this, not the reason I bring this up once again, just to clarify. Don't be arrogant. These people who think that it's going to be a cakewalk. No, it's going to be a horrific nightmare you will wish never happened. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are very well trained and very smart and preppers. But I'll tell you this. There's a saying, I don't necessarily know exactly what it means, but a lot of people say it. Those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. I'm thinking of this in reference to this trope of the guy in the bar minding his own business and the loudmouth guy who's walking around acting like he's all big. And then it turns out the quiet guy who wanted to be left alone was the one you didn't want to mess with. There are people who know exactly what war would look like, who know exactly what this could lead to. And they're the ones telling you, you do not want this. I read this the other day. There was a post saying the people who've actually been to war, they're the ones warning you, shut your mouth. This is not something you'll appreciate, not something you'll want. And you have no idea just how bad it will really be. With these far leftists, I think it's funny. They want civil war. They want chaos and revolution just as much as, say, like the Boogaloo Boys. It's why many of the Boogaloo Boys have actually said that they're on the side of these far leftists. Here we have a man with his hand on his weapon. He knew what he was going to do. He was ready to do it. It was not self-defense. How can you argue self-defense when you stalk two men with your hand on your weapon and then when they turn around, you shoot one of them? Pappas said, but when they were walking, they heard someone yell and they turned around. Now we know his statement is corroborated by surveillance footage. The far left has gone nuts. And I think we're in for a mess, man. The reason I brought up the organizational stuff too is that Black Lives Matter. We're shutting you down. Violent BLM protesters attack stunned diners and smash up a restaurant in Rochester in shocking footage during protest over the death of Daniel Prude. Now that's a riot, but they'll riot for anything. So when you have enforcer types with guns hunting people down, I hope that's a fluke. But why should I believe that's a fluke? We had a guy in Kenosha say, you take one of ours, we take one of yours. And then sure enough, this is what happened. That's why some people think it was an eye for an eye, a tit for tat. They said, okay, Kyle Rittenhouse, well, now we're going to go out. But Kyle Rittenhouse was self-defense. They don't care. They don't care about what's true or what's right. This man, Reinhold, based on his interview with Vice News, is clearly delusional, saying there's like Trump supporters all around me with weapons. I mean, obviously he's lying, but the dude was nuts. Clearly. Interestingly, an acquaintance of his says, I don't have sympathy for him. They say a man who was suspected of fatally shooting a supporter of right-wing group was killed by authorities. A local acquaintance of the man and the U.S. Attorney General had harsh words for the self-proclaimed Antifa sympathizer. They say Craig Gilbert was acquainted with Reinhold. He runs Gilbert's Tire Pros in Gresham and told Coin6 Reinhold was a customer for more than a decade. Gilbert said he was shocked when he saw the Vice News interview making its rounds on social media. You can't shoot somebody in the chest and run off. And then you get on that thing I saw on Facebook, the video with Vice, and he's talking like he was hunting. And we're not animals, said Gilbert. Everybody's got a right to do what they want if it's peaceful. Unfortunately, it hasn't been peaceful, but you can't walk up to somebody. You can't walk up because somebody's got a Patriot prayer hat or Trump hat or whatever and shoot them in the chest. It's wrong. We can't act like this. You know, there are still people screeching about Donald Trump and calling vets losers or whatever. Okay, you know what? I don't care if it's true at this point. I really don't. Let me tell you something. Trump got on the defensive with it. They called him a liar, all that stuff. Trump calls people names. He calls people fat pigs. Oh, yeah, so Trump said a bunch of losers were dead. Whatever. I don't believe it because that's like a cartoonishly evil even for Trump. It's like a TDS fan fiction, you know. But let me ask you something. What are you more concerned about? Donald Trump 2 years ago called a bunch of fallen soldiers losers, or a far leftist stalked two Trump supporters, executing one of them before fleeing. The media gave him a space to lie, saying it was self-defense. They were going to harm a person of color. Every single one of his leftist allies coming out saying he was only defending himself, but we know he was stalking these men. A group of hundreds, if not 1,000 plus, Black Lives Matter, smashing up a restaurant, climbing on people's homes. What is more important? I think it's hilarious. Their desperate attempt to spin the news cycle off the riots. Well, you know what the problem is, Democrats? You didn't stop the riots. Amazing. You thought you could change the news cycle when the riots are still happening and Democratic DAs refuse to prosecute them. What did you think was going to happen? You had one day where you're like, how dare Trump call vets losers? And people talked about it. And then by that night, extremists were smashing up a restaurant. Well, here's the story from the Hill. 9 in 10 voters say civil unrest a key issue in presidential race. 9 out of 10. Black Lives Matter is actively and overtly supported by the Democrats. At the DNC, they showed images of people wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. They refused to call it out, and it is Black Lives Matter that is going around and smashing up restaurants, trying to break into people's homes, harassing people at their homes. It is not Antifa. That's why this guy, Reinhold, I don't call, he says he was Antifa, sure, but he's Black Lives Matter. You know why? It's very clear. If an Antifa guy walks up to a bunch of college kids and says, how many of you want to go tear down the government and have a revolution for communism? You're going to get mostly people saying, huh? What if they walk up and say, how many of you want to smash racism and fight for Black Lives Matter? You'll get a huge group of people being like, okay. The people that are marching aren't chanting anti-capitalista. They're chanting Black Lives Matter. A top-down national organization with different chapters that receives funding from across this country with organizational power that can snap their fingers and get thousands of people marching in the streets while lunatics on the far left are given clearance to attack police, to firebomb buildings, to Molotov buildings, and not a single Democrat will call them out. So I ask you, what is more dangerous? But I'm going to leave you with some good news. Donald Trump has done potentially the smartest thing that I didn't even realize he could have done. As people said, invoke the Insurrection Act, send in the military. Others said, you can't do that. The local governments will resist. It will be like an occupying force. So the DHS deputized Oregon State Police. And now the far left is panicking. You know why? Those state charges that got dropped. Well, apparently now the FBI is going to their homes and saying, don't worry. We picked those charges back up because the man who arrested you, he was deputized by the feds. This is a federal crime now. Smartest move ever. So listen, you want me to be idealistic and pretend like it's not happening? What should I say? Don't worry. The warrant that came out proving that Reinhold stalked Trump supporters and killed him, it means nothing. Nothing's going to happen. Go back to sleep, America. Here's American Gladiators. Here's 1,000 channels of it. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say it was worse today than it was yesterday. Escalation is happening because those are facts. If you don't want to hear the facts, I'm sorry. I don't have to tell you. I'm not trying to make you angry. But I will tell you, the New York Times is telling us the exact same thing. Farhad Manjoo, I'm doomsday prepping for the end of democracy. Even if Trump loses, there's no guarantee we'll make it to the other side. I didn't just make this up one day, guys. I'm sorry. I wish it weren't true either. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have predictions, and I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing. I ordered emergency food. I ordered more emergency food. I'm not the only one. An op-ed in the New York Times saying doomsday prepping for the end of democracy. He's not kidding. He's talking about saving money because he thinks there's going to be an economic collapse or crisis, and he wants to have cash available. I'm not even convinced the cash would be worth anything if that really happened. Although I don't believe we're going to get that bad. Otherwise, I'd be buying stacks and stacks of gold or something, which I'm not doing. I admittedly, I did buy a little bit. I got crypto and stuff. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But I'll tell you this. Surveillance footage came out showing that a far leftist hunted a guy down. Killed him. Black Lives Matter, last night, attacked patrons at a restaurant, knocking tables over, smashing up tables, climbing on people's homes. Here's what I said. They'll come to your house. It won't be an individual kicking your door in and then shooting your dog or something. Right now, we are watching exactly what I said. First, they go up to your house. Then other people jump up and climb on the roof and they're all dancing. Other people see it. Eventually, someone will jump in, mob mentality, and then everyone's throwing bricks at the house. They don't know why. Someone will yell, that's a Nazi house. They try breaking into an apartment building. They're escalating because every time they hear this and every time they see this, they're emboldened to take it one step further. It's normalized. If everything we just saw happened on day one of the Black Lives Matter riots, Trump would be at 90% approval. Black Lives Matter would be at 95% opposition, and people would be screaming. But because we are frogs in a pot coming to a slow boil, we do not realize what is happening around us. Now, I do. Most of you probably do. But regular people who have been watching this, it's normalizing. So eventually they will be breaking into homes and people will be like, wow, they broke into another home again. Could you imagine? I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.